Welcome to Rooted Within with Lili and Dan, a podcast that shines a spotlight on positive change makers, sharing their stories of legacy, inspiration, and impact.
Good afternoon, Dan.
Good afternoon, how are you?
I'm good. You're looking good today.
Thank you. I just got straight
Have
from
you
the gym.
schmoozing?
Been schmoozing this morning at the gym. So yeah, I put a shirt on for once. My mum will be proud.
She'll be very
Scrubbing
proud.
up well.
Listen, I am really excited.
I am. I have to make an apology first.
What are you going to do?
Because JJ, our producer,
Yep.
was outside and was very starstruck by our next guest. And I'm not a big fan of cricket.
Oh, God.
So
That's
I would
two
know
of us.
nothing
As an
about
Aussie,
cricket.
I'm shocking. I'm absolutely shocking.
So I think that's a good
Great intro.
segue into throwing over to our guest, which is the legend, Azeem Rafiq. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's good to be here.
And also a fellow Northerner.
Yeah, not far.
Yeah,
small
we
world.
were just talking. You're from Barnsley, which is not far from where I'm from, Rochdale.
Yeah, not far. The Northern Belt, Yorkshire, Lancashire, across the
Indeed.
Pennines.
You've completely lost me.
Like Lily's just like, okay, where,
I'm like,
who,
Australia?
what?
I'm surprised you don't cricket Australia.
Oh, shocking. I'm not into cricket and I'm not into AFL. It's really bad. I'm a bad Australian.
You're a bad sports person, sports fan.
But there's always the Boxing Day match that everyone knows, and everyone goes down there, and everyone's totally.
The Ashes is starting in a week's time.
I totally
I
knew
think
that.
no, you didn't.
Did you know that?
Of course I did.
Of course you did.
Of course
Yeah,
I did.
same.
Actually, I think on that note, so we don't get caught out as being frauds, I think it's a good opportunity to hand over to Azeem and give us a little bit of an intro about yourself. And
Who are you?
Yeah, I mean, many people will probably know. We didn't, but over to you.
Yeah, look, last few years and what I guess a lot of people know me as someone who spoke out institutional racism at Yorkshire County Cricket Club, which escalated into international story. But I moved from Pakistan to the UK in 2001. Played professional cricket for Yorkshire.
Did you always play cricket as a kid? Was it something that you
Well,
absolutely loved? Like, how did it?
Well,
how
I'm
did
not
this
going to say,
dream
isn't it
start?
like a national sport within Pakistan or South Asia? It's huge.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's national sports hockey, but
Okay.
cricket's the living blood of
Yeah.
everything. I grew up on the streets of Karachi, really hot just like it is here now. As soon as the sun goes down, just played cricket all day, every day. Mum used to run around trying to get me to do my homework or read the Quran, but, it was always cricket for me. Just loved it. And then, when I moved over to the UK, joined the cricket club, and, went from there,
But
progressed through the ranks.
Were you like naturally talented? Was it like this guy is great, this kid's great, we've got to grab onto him, or was it something that evolved?
I from a very young age was involved, with Yorkshire age group. I captained England under 15s, and then captained England under 19s at the World Cup. And signed my first professional contract at 17. So
At seven,
That's insane.
cricket went well.
don't you love it how he just so nonchalant says, captain
Professional.
under 15, 19, signed on at 17. This is big. Like
Yeah.
as a 17-year-old, how did that feel?
I think you don't actually realize it because you're still young, you're naive to the world. You just, I was just playing cricket because I love cricket. Every chance there was to play a match, it was another day of cricket. So it's when you're young, you don't see the professional, all that stuff. You just want to
feel
play
the
the game.
passion.
Yeah, the love, and I was brought up, with cricket as my love, my passion, and everything. So you didn't really see it as a job till you get older, and then you realize what you're doing, and then you get made to realize that you're a professional, and then all the difficulties start coming in.
What was that timing like? So 17, it still felt like a passion, and you're getting to not have to do homework and get to play all day, every day. When did it stop being that and started becoming this is your job?
I mean, look, I signed my contract then, so it was a job then, but it was all I tried to concentrate on was trying to be the best in the world, and I just wanted to play cricket for England. And I guess you just live in that bubble a little bit. Now that I'm outside the bubble, I see it a bit more like you live in a bubble and don't really realize actually, what you're achieving is quite good, and also how lucky you are to be able to call your passion your love, and being able to represent Yorkshire County Cricket Club, which is huge, and then get the chance to put on the Three Lions regardless of what age group or what level. You know, it's an incredible honour.
When you did get to put on that jersey, do you remember that day? Do you remember that feeling?
Yeah. You know, I remember England under 15. We had like a regional competition. I was representing the South, and then, you know, at the end of the week there was like a awards dinner, and then the England under 15 team was named out, and, you know, I got announced as captain, and it was just surreal. You know,
Wow.
it was just surreal. And then as 15-year-olds, we had like a 2-week tour type thing against Barbados under 16s and Scotland under 17s, where we all sort of, you know, lived together. And, you know, as a 15-year-old, getting away from parents and, you know, living together, it was just great fun. And I mean, the one brilliant thing is as well now seeing the lads that I shared that dressing room with have gone on to achieve their dreams, you know, win World Cups, win Ashes series, captain England, which is just, I'm just chuffed a bit.
So I was going to say, like, these guys that you were hanging around with at the age of like 15 onwards, like, they're now seniors within established teams, like you said, and playing in tournaments all over the world and winning. That must be insane to see.
Yeah, look, I'm chuffed to bits for them. You
Yeah.
know, it's great to see, you know, lads that you've shared a dressing room with, been lucky enough to captain, go on and achieve so much, you know, and, you know, live their dreams. And, you know, it gives me goosebumps every time I talk about, you know, what they've been able to. And so many of them have, you know, Ben Stokes, Joe Root, Joss Butler, these guys have all gone on and achieved so much. And every time I watch them on TV and follow them, I think it's just such a warmth and such a great feeling.
And how was the family towards your career? I mean, at such a young age, and then going into the world of cricket and becoming a professional sportsman, were they supportive? You know, how did that play out from an early age?
Yeah, very supportive.
Yeah.
You know, actually, there's a bit of a story behind it. So we moved to the UK because my dad's business partner got kidnapped and burnt.
Whoa, hang on a minute.
Hey.
See, this is where guests just say things, so you're just like,
Kidnapped
okay.
and burnt.
What?
Yeah, it was, you know, it was around the time that things were getting a bit unsafe around Karachi.
In Pakistan?
Yeah, and that was the reason why, you know, Dad was very successful in real estate and properties, and so, yeah, we picked up, and, you know, we went to Saudi Arabia pilgrimage, and then went to UK because Dad's brothers were there. We were actually going to move on to Canada or America, but, you know, we ended up staying there. And
So he literally took the entire family out of safety, really, to remove you from that threat.
Yeah, so, and then, you know, the first few years in the UK was really tough.
Yeah.
You know,
How old were you?
I was 10, 2001.
And is that did you go straight to Barnsley at that time?
We were
or?
initially in London for a few months, and
Okay.
then when we went to Barnsley, don't ask me why.
But, I mean, we were talking kind of like off air. It's like there's a massive Pakistani and Asian population in like that kind of northern area.
In the region, yeah, but
Yeah.
not Barnsley. You know, Barnsley is predominantly white. You know,
Okay.
at the time, you know, only recently before that there'd been a mosque and that'd been burnt.
I never knew that.
And then, you know,
How was that for you? Because that's a massive culture shock.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, I remember it. You know, I actually remember it clearly, and it was tough. It
Yeah.
was, you know, because we've gone from, and, you know, in Pakistan we were in very good position. You know, I'd say privileged upbringing up to that stage, and then to go from that to completely the other end where, you know, things were difficult. School and
But so
cricket.
did you guys have to sort of leave with? Was it a case of you basically left with the clothes on your back and couldn't get?
I wouldn't say to that extent, but, you know, had to just, you know, leave everything and just go type thing. And it was interesting when we sort of got there, and cricket initially, joining the local cricket club, and that was next to the school, was actually a really good way to get into, you know, normal life.
'Cause there must have been some familiarity with playing cricket, because obviously it was something you were passionate about, so it was something for you to ease your way into that community, I guess.
Well, it was something that I felt most comfortable, you know.
At a time when you weren't comfortable.
Yeah, at ease with myself. But, you know, Dad recently told me after I spoke out on racism and stuff, there was, you know, Mum and Dad had decided one night that we were going back because, you know, they were finding it difficult. And next morning, letter came through the post that I'd been selected for Yorkshire under 12s. So, you
And
know,
they kept them.
they just said, you know what, we've just got to stay. So, you know, for my cricket, they sacrificed that, you know, Mum and Dad sacrificed their whole life, and my siblings.
Knowing that, how does it make you feel?
You know, when he told me that, and obviously he told me when I'd spoke out on everything I've gone through and everything I've spoken about, you know, I mean, incredible in one way. As you know, he sacrificed his whole life. But at the same time, I feel absolutely gutted, and just with how cricket and where it's ended up in my life and the role it's played in the, where it's brought me on a human level. I just feel absolutely gutted, really, because they thought I was living my dream, but every day that was going there, I was hating every second of it, and to hear how much he put on the line for it and everyone else, and not to be. To have ended up in a situation where it's driven me close to taking my own life. That hurts.
Do you carry guilt with that?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's something I can't ever bring back. And whether mum and dad would have been able to share with us. There's days now, and the mental scars that I carry with myself. I wish he'd have told us and we'd have gone back.
But he would never have done it any different, though. Like, he would never, ever want you to feel guilty for that.
Absolutely not. The night of the select committee where I spoke out, my dad said to me, no runs or wickets could have ever done, or World Cups or Ashes could have done what you've done today. So, that's something that's that I can take with me. But, we're humans, and, naturally we feel guilt, and that and around the loss of my son and the impact cricket had on them too, and what was happening at my workplace.
So we've got to rewind.
I was going to say,
we've got to rewind and position this.
There's so much that came out of that.
So we go back.
Conversation.
We go back. You got into cricket. You're the captain. Things are going great. At that point, then.
Yeah, I think even around then, so captaining under 19, so I joined a Yorkshire dressing room full of senior stars, people I've watched on TV, people who are my heroes, and very early on, as I look back now, there was a lot of racist comments, overt racism, and no one really stopped it.
Could you share some of those comments?
Yeah, I've shared it so many, and being called the P word regularly. As Asians, we were told to go sit, pointed towards the toilet, go sit there. There was a lot of comments to others as well, like elephant washers. So there was a constant, if I was in socializing nights out and talking to someone, my teammates would come over and say, don't talk to him, he's a P word. I remember an instance here, we were on pre-season in Dubai, in Barasti, and a teammate come over and goes, don't talk to him, he's not a sheikh, he's got no oil. So there was all of this. Then you had, we'd be traveling through London and they'd be like, oh, is that your uncle's corner shop? If there's a bearded man, is that your dad? And you had all of this stuff, but you had it.
Just saying it is making me feel sick.
Yeah.
So, but you had it. You go as a young player going into that dressing room. All you cared about is playing cricket for England.
Yeah.
You're a little bit, and you want to sort of, if these are things that you don't, you get brought up, you've got to be 2 times better. Make sure you can't do anything, don't say anything, just carry on with your cricket. And for a very long time, I looked the other way. And also for a person of colour to start actually believing that they're being treated differently because of their race or their religion, it's so draining.
Yeah.
It's so tough to accept it because you start looking at things with that lens and it eats away at you in a manner that inside that nothing else can. So, I went into the dressing room and that was the norm. And I also went into the dressing room as religious, values driven. But what happened, I felt like, and I saw other people from the same background as me starting to fit in, going out, socializing, drinking. And through the 2-3 years, I think subconsciously I started doing the same and started trying to fit in. And that was really difficult because even while I was doing that, I was still feeling the same things and being treated.
So you started drinking?
Yeah, I started drinking.
As a religious person,
which is
started
against
drinking.
all of your values
which
and
is
morals.
against everything.
That would have been a really hard decision to make.
Yeah, and what happened is initially I got a lot of opportunities. So when I captained the club, it was around the time that I was fitting in. And so I was like, oh, this is brilliant. And like I said, the one thing that I have regret over is that I was prepared to do anything or run through any brick wall to be the best in the world, to play cricket for England. And clearly, through that time, I wasn't strong enough to stick to my values, and I lost myself. But end of that year, I sort of, so the last game of the season in 2012, I got 8 wickets in the game, 15 both innings, got Yorkshire promoted, got picked for England Lions, went to the Champions League. Like, my career was like that. And I remember the night out we had, celebrating that on the way back, and I cried my eyes out to my teammates. And something wasn't right. But at that time, I couldn't put my finger on what it was.
But you cried in front of your teammates.
I cried to one of the senior players, like literally cried my eyes out.
And how did they react to that?
Yeah, nothing. Just
nothing back.
Nothing. Yeah, I mean, I think, look, some of them were aware, but I think a lot of, and this is what, as I look back now, is cricket is a very interesting sport, whereas it's played in a team environment, but it's a very individual sport. And a lot of people sort of look the other way or put a blind eye to it and try and carry on because
many were responsible for this.
Yeah,
they were part of that conversation, or not even conversation. They were part of that abuse that was being held in dressing rooms or on
by
coaches.
Saying nothing, you're enabling. You're guilty as well. But my question for you, where do you think that need for your teammates to be that racist came from?
I think it was so embedded in that culture.
Yeah,
it is
so embedded. It's so institutionalized that a lot of these people don't even realize that they're doing anything wrong, and a lot of the lads,
they think they're being funny.
Yeah, it's
really,
look, a lot of it was
banter.
Yeah,
is what they put it down to.
Look, my book that's going to come out, the title, it's not banter, it's racism.
Yeah,
that when we go on to the independent report, they term the word, me being called a P word, as banter. So this is a top KC in the country.
Easy to say when you're not on the receiving end.
But this is, sorry, I'm just getting goosebumps right now because we had this conversation outside. I'm from Rochdale, which has a massive, massive Pakistani population. And me as a kid was institutionalized to believe that it was banter in the environment that I was in because we were exposed to it every single day. We mentioned it was like, oh, go to the pea shop or go here. Like, it was common language that was just thrown around, completely blasé, without understanding like the ramifications or the actual meaning behind it. And this was from like the age of like 5 onwards.
Okay, get that. But did you ever turn around to them and say, you know what, that's not cool? Can you not say that to me?
No, that's my point about it. So, these lads went into that dressing room as 15-year-olds, and they're seeing these people use that word, and no one ever saying, including myself or other people of colour, this is not acceptable.
Did anyone believe it was not acceptable?
And that's where, but it's the responsibility of the leadership and also sporting environments. And this is not just cricket. A lot of sports are still living in the 80s because what you have in sporting environments is very much a job for the boys sort of system circle. So the bloke who was the director of cricket in 2020, when I spoke out, started his career in the late 80s in that dressing room, then became, through the 90s, a player, senior player, captain, coach, and then a little bit. So he's only lived that bubble, and what was acceptable and normal when he first started, he still felt was acceptable and normal in 2020. So I think a lot of it comes from embedded culture.
Yeah.
And I think where Yorkshire, the northern, the one thing I found more surprising was when I actually spoke out, we went online, there was so much of this that had in the public domain with Yorkshire County Cricket Club, whether that be fan abuse over the years of international players, whether that be Imran Khan talking about it in 99, whether that be a local MP talking about it in 2003. And throughout all of this, what happens is whenever someone speaks out in any way, there's 3 ways the institution or the system goes. Tries to first discredit them and attack them. Second, try and use their power to scare them. If that doesn't work, then try and pay them or get them involved in the system. And they tried all of these aspects with me.
But see, this is what doesn't make sense. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
Because it's all well and good to say, oh, it's the bubble that they grew up in and blah, blah, blah. This is, that's, sorry, no offense, but that's a bullshit excuse. because at the end of the day,
It is now, but
no,
back,
no, no,
but
but
back then
listen,
it
but
kind of
listen
wasn't.
to what he's saying. He's saying that when anyone spoke out, the first thing they did was try and
True.
silence them. So if
Yes.
he didn't think anything was
Why
wrong,
would you silence people?
why would you silence
Exactly,
them?
yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting really
No, you
angry
are.
about
No,
this.
and that's and this is the thing. It's things that you look at and you think, why have things not got better? And I think society in the UK at the over the last sort of 6-7 years, there's been a very much this trying to go around the issue, and it's happening in cricket right now. 3 years on, dominating headlines, seeing people suffer. You think that there'd be a bit more of an understanding and a will to understand before going to solutions.
They're not living outside of the world.
And also what happens is a lot of these issues is people don't actually understand the problem before they jump onto the solutions. And, at the minute I'm seeing a lot of, the quickest PR fad initiatives that can be found to cover it up.
Yeah.
Now, the biggest, and I would, for any of them, I'm sure that they'll be listening whenever this comes out, is this will backfire way bigger than, over what the last 3 years has brought, if it's not dealt with in the correct manner.
Of course, because you're not trying to really fix the problem. You're just trying to pretend the problem never
Band-Aid.
happened,
Yeah.
or
It's a
just to cover
Band-Aid.
it, or just trying to create a perception that it no longer exists.
Well,
but it
Yeah.
still exists.
But it's
The
what you
fundamental
said.
challenges have not been fixed.
But it's what you just said, PR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go back slightly because you
Yes.
talked about the intimidation, and you talked about like the ways that people try to, I guess, coerce or manipulate or change that narrative. What happened to you? Because many things you mentioned death threats earlier, and that was one of the key things which I heard before.
When I think we need to go one step
Yeah.
further back, because you said you cried to your teammates.
Yeah.
What happened after that? And when did it get to the point where you decided it's time I spoke out? Give us that journey.
Yeah. Well, you might have to extend this by 45 minutes more.
We will do.
We will
It's
do.
an important topic.
I mean, that's 2012, right? We go into 2013, and 2013 was the first time where I nearly committed suicide. I found myself at the other side of my balcony, and I don't even know how I pulled myself back, but I did. And,
What took you there?
it was a build-up of all of this. One, losing myself, the guilt of, actually losing not my religion and my values for cricket, but also, after doing all that, still feeling like I was just not welcomed and isolated in that environment. And, and then I had an injury, and suddenly I found myself in that situation. But, my religion and my family and what it would do to, only a few years earlier, my cousin had committed suicide. So I knew what it would do to, and, I pulled myself back from that. I started taking antidepressants, and I found the next sort of year and a half really, really challenging. I didn't know whether I was, and as South Asians
And you were
as well.
still playing every day.
Yeah, and also what you have is we live two different lives. So we live the life at home, and then when we get out, because a lot of the British culture and society and workplace is so heavily revolved around socializing and alcohol,
Yeah.
that you just felt like, if you weren't part of that you just weren't going to progress.
Oh, I remember when I worked in the UK, I literally got pulled aside and got told you're not drinking enough.
Wow.
Yeah, I was not included because I was being too professional.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's very interesting you say that, and that there's this thing of, so I compare it to some other places in the world, and when you trying to be actually work hard and be the best at your job, it was seen as is not part, not.
Oh, I got
Not part
ostracized.
of the team.
Yeah,
Not part of the team.
It was like
I
trying
literally
to
got
be the-
ostracized for a little while.
Trying
Yeah.
to be I remember my coaches saying you're trying too hard, you're working too hard, and I'm like, hold on a minute, and I've heard
You're
it
a
with other
professional
players.
athlete.
I've heard it with other players. There was a young guy, made his England debut at a very young age, performed immensely. Haseeb Hameed performed immensely on an Indian tour, just incredible, right? And then he came back to Lancashire, and he struggled a little bit. And his father was super connect. They had a really, and that comes a little bit from our culture as well. He'd be batting all day, every day, training. And I'm hearing whispers about him being told, oh, you're working too hard. We need to separate you from your dad, or just come out with us, have a drink. And it's like, hold on a minute. So, he's struggling and he wants to work harder, and you're telling him not to work hard. You're not realizing the cultural aspects of his connection with his father. His father has put all his life into it, and then you say, "Oh, come out and socialize and have a drink." And it's like, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
What
It's
is
like, why don't you step up instead?
But what is that? How is that a solution to someone's struggle? So that just came to me because of what you said. So 2014, I left Yorkshire.
I'm going to ask you a question if it's okay. What made you step back from the ledge?
What it would do to my dad, what it would do to my family and my religion. That in the end, I was
That's what
strong,
kept you.
I was strong. My strong faith and my family sort of love was brought.
So
brought
who
me
you
back.
really were was what
I
held you
myself,
back. You
I found myself on that crossover. But over the next sort of phases of my life, I didn't really, I didn't really go, like I was still sort of fighting. There's a lot of, and in 2014, I left the club. I had a year and a half out. I got married, and I sort of found myself back. And then sort of start of 2016, I was starting to love cricket again, and performing really well. Yorkshire had their player selected for England, so there was a space. I got asked to, come and have a session. I did. I hadn't lost the ability. I was captain in the club, so straight away I was back in the team, and that first few months was really nice. It was beautiful. The guy who was the captain of the one-day team was a friend. The coach was an Australian, Aboriginal background, and there was some warmth with him, and so it was really fun. Performed immensely. Again, I was on, back really where I'd left. And then the coach left. They got rid of the captain, and the two guys that came in were just, just as toxic as they come. And everything just went.
Why'd they get rid of him?
Well, the coach was moving back to Australia, and the captain they wanted to get rid of because they didn't like him. And obviously that's his experience for him to talk about. I don't want to talk about someone else.
Fair,
so
fair.
these two guys came in, and then it just felt like deja vu all over again.
So history was repeating itself again.
Yeah, the feelings came back, and honestly, this time it was like the first time. A lot was happening, but I was oblivious to it. And as I think back, this is what was happening. This time it was like happening, and I could feel it as it was happening.
A lot more awareness.
See it. The awareness was there, and never ever felt as unwelcomed and different than through that period. And then initially, in middle of 2017, I reported one of the guys as bullying, because again, you don't want to mention that racism.
Word.
Yeah, because that word, the minute you mention that word, it's like. But the guy who I sort of said the bullying about was brother-in-law to the coach. There was a massive clique, and initially they sort of spoke to me, and I thought, let's just let it go, let's just move on, And I wasn't the only person who reported it. Several players did, but I then faced the backlash of that.
Why?
I was the only person who wasn't white out of the ones who reported it. And I'm very clear in that, one of the guys who reported it stronger than me, I've got like messages with him saying, oh, they're not doing anything to me. In that, through the end of 2017, we were at an awards dinner, and one of the board members himself came up to me and another South Asian player and said, oh, I've been hearing this stuff about, the coach, the captain, about being racist. And we've like, yeah, but we're like, we don't want to do anything about it right now, because again, we wanted things to just get better. That was it really. From there onwards, and then my wife's pregnancy came. Through that time, the club was horrible, inhuman.
In what way horrible?
I was leaving. Genuinely, the first time we knew there was a problem, I was at a training session, and I got a phone call that they can't find a heartbeat.
And you said that's a problem with your wife's pregnancy.
Yeah, I ran home. That day we found it, and then through that time we had, it was irregular heartbeat. We were visiting the hospital, and the coach and the director, they just didn't understand it. They just didn't want to.
Didn't understand.
Or
Or
don't
didn't
care.
care.
I guess I'm
Like, how can you not understand?
Yeah.
just didn't. It was very blasé about it all, and I remember I didn't want to go on the pre-season tour because it was getting to the business end of the pregnancy, and I was like, I needed to be there with my wife. And, on the day that they were going, the coach was so blasé, oh, she'll be fine. Like, he had no clue about what was happening.
Was he a father?
Yeah, yeah. That in itself was like, but when professional sports people and a lot of the leaders, they're not fit to do their job, they end up getting so pressurized by the job that they lose all human elements of themselves. So it was so blasé about the whole thing, and then a few weeks on, and I genuinely, they made me feel like I was actually making it up or exaggerating what we were going through. And then 38 week, we lost our son. I carried my son from the hospital to the graveyard, and it's something that I still struggle. And I was telling you guys earlier, I did a podcast yesterday, and probably the first time spoke since the select committee. It's the first time I've spoken deeply through what that was like for me. And May was 5 years to the day. So it was 5 years recently. So it's so raw, but it was the way my workplace,
there was no
and these
support.
people treated me around that is probably what forced me to speak out in the end. And one of the reasons I wanted some answers of how and what they were thinking to. I had just gone through, something I wouldn't
Was
wish on
anyone there for you
Most
then?
traumatic experience ever.
One person, one player. The guy who was captain when I first joined, Alex Lee's one player. He came, he went, when I carried my son from hospital to the graveyard, he came with me, and then he came to our house.
So you literally carried
Yeah.
out of the hospital?
Yeah, I mean, the same basket that I was going to carry him home to his nursery, and I carried him to home, see my grandma and everyone, and then to the graveyard. So, sorry.
Don't apologize.
That day is something that I will. It never goes. It just never goes. But then I think it's left a huge hole for me, because what I had to face from that is, we could hate each other, never get on in our lives, and something like that would just be like, I've always been brought up, my dad's always brought me up in a way where, there are some things that are more important than anything else, and that's around death, marriage, baby,
humanity,
human elements.
Yeah.
Everything else just goes out the window. And and this is what, even sat here today and through when we go onto the press and the way I was attacked, when they're defending that side, this is what they're defending. This is what they're defending. And if that sits well with you, then that's fine. If 10 years time you can look back, and I just hope that you never learn the hard way of what, as a human being, I have gone through over this last 5 years, and how I've had to pick myself up, put my life together, keep myself alive, keep my wife sane, and that what that woman has gone through over the last 5 years. I just, I struggle. I don't even know really what she's going through, and I still see the scars of that in our life, in our everyday life. And that's the real tough bit. And I guess what we're going to go on to now, that's where I have gathered my strength from. He's my strength.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
The saddest thing there is the bit where it shows how this institution has destroyed so many humans. Because like you said, it takes a real special person to not feel anything in the middle of all that. And like you said
human,
there, but what you were saying was how their humanity from the institution was destroyed.
Yeah.
So, that's also an incredibly sad thing, because it's not just one person's life that's been destroyed by an institution. Even the people who did the abuse, the toxic people, they're also incredibly broken.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what it's like?
I don't feel anything.
I'm not on their side because of, your story's far greater, but looking at all sides of it, there's so many victims here.
And that's exactly, there's a lot has happened over the last 3 years, which as we sort of go the chronology in terms of, and I feel for the people on the other side. I really do, because I don't want anyone to get into the space that I've got into. And I don't doubt that some of them have not, have pushed it themselves,
Yeah.
but it's still the blame, if you want to blame someone, or there's a responsibility, lies solely at the hands of Yorkshire County Cricket Club, the leaders at Yorkshire County Cricket Club, the CEO, the director of cricket, the chair, that initial investigation, where I sat in an 8-hour hearing and I talked to them constantly, and I kept saying to them, I'm giving you examples, but you don't blame the individuals.
Yeah.
Look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But that word, institutional racism, was too damaging for them as a brand,
accept.
as a business, that they thought,
'Cause
right.
nobody wants to admit to that.
They thought, right. And with the help of the people who conducted that investigation, who, largely throughout the last 3 years, a lot of people who have caused to just get divided and divided and divided have never been held accountable, are the people who ran the investigation. And in the end, individuals on that side, if there's an acceptance and a willingness, and with some of them there was, I was the first one to say, we've got to help and support them. But because, it was divided in such a manner that it's now got to a point where people have suffered, but also, like you said, there are victims before even I speak out, because the human element's gone out of everyone, just for the sake of what? For some runs, for some wickets, for
Crazy.
some sport.
When exactly was it? So you'd put in the whole bullying, then it became racism. Then what happened with your son? At what point did it go from being just you putting it into you standing up and going out and publicly speaking about it and bringing up a massive case?
So basically, May 2018, lost my son. My first day back, the director of cricket literally got me in a room and absolutely ripped the shreds off me. It's one of the
For
days.
what?
So basically, just before, the final night that my son probably had his last breaths, I was taken up to play a match in Durham. I was taken up there. Bearing in mind, 2017, I was a leading wicket taker in both white ball formats for Yorkshire. Second in the country, or thereabouts, second, near the top in the country in one format, and about fourth or fifth in the other format. Done immensely. I got taken up there, knowing full well what I was going on at home, and then they didn't play me. Now my wife had her last appointment on that day.
Why didn't they play you?
I still don't have that.
And they
answer.
were aware of what was happening.
They knew exactly what was happening at home, so they took me up there and then didn't play me. So, I mean, to say I was angry would be an understatement.
Yeah.
But
It's
instead
no
of
compassion there.
instead of like saying it, I just went quiet.
Mm.
I just did my 12-man duties, just went quiet, didn't say anything, didn't speak to the coach or the captain, because I knew there was so much in there that if I might
You'd
say
blow.
something. Yeah. So I didn't say anything. So that was the reason. So I got into, he said, because I didn't speak to the captain or the coach, and we'd had all these problems the year before with everyone else, and getting left out and stuff. And then one of the other players retired because of me, and I was like, hold on a minute, right? Firstly, I've just gone through this. Are you all right? And he just kept going and kept shouting, and then I just broke down in tears, and I was just like, look, I've got to go. So that was my first, and then from there onwards, I just knew what was happening. I knew they were going to try and use the loss of my son to make sure I was in the last year of my contract, to make sure I don't play enough cricket to be able to not only to be able to for them to be in a position. They didn't want to give me a contract, but if I play and perform, they had no choice, right?
Mm.
So that not only did they want to stop me from playing and not be able to get my contract at Yorkshire, they tried to stop me playing and not impress enough to get contract elsewhere. So they just wanted to.
They wanted to screw
They
you.
wanted to finish me, right? They wanted to finish me at that stage. So I could see it playing out, but I had a bigger problem at the time. I had.
You dealing with the loss of
I
your
was
son?
dealing with my. I
Yeah.
was trying to support my wife, and that was
Well, you
so.
were just trying to survive.
Yeah, that was so difficult. Yet at the same time, knowing full well if I lose my contract and my career, how am
do
I
I
going to
look after the
financially?
family?
Yeah,
Right.
so much pressure.
So I was battling like so much. People are saying, "Don't neglect yourself," and I'm like, "How can
How?
I? How can I not neglect myself?
Yeah.
My wife is my priority, and I'm going to do anything and everything to, support her. And then it came to a head, and I asked for a meeting with the director of cricket, the CEO, and then my agent was going to come.
Did you speak to anyone about this during this time? Like,
yeah, I spoke to the assistant coach.
Oh no, not within the
No.
coach, not cricket, as in
Family.
friends, family, anything.
I spoke to my agent, who I thought was on my side. I spoke to the PCA, my Players Cricket Association development, my personal development manager, who I thought was on my side, and a friend who had been a sponsor. So then I asked for this meeting. I knew my agent was going to pull out last minute because he needed work from the club.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he
And
cared more about his reputation.
He represented some of the other players as well, so I knew he was going to pull out. I knew he had a personal situation at the time, so I was respectful of it, but I knew he was going to pull out. So I rang my friend, and whatever happened to me, and Allah made me ring him. That is the best thing I did. I rang him because I knew he would come, and also if I was in the wrong, he'd tell me. And then we had the PCA guy, who again I thought was on my side, but clearly he was working with them. The night before that meeting, I went and met the board member in his house. I cried in his front room, like literally cried my eyes out, went through everything. He said to me, he'll support me, he'll do this, he'll do that for
Right.
me. The minute I walked out of his house, and we found out later through the subject access request, he stabbed me in the back.
Did you find that happen with many people in that journey?
Everyone,
Yeah.
everyone, apart from my friend. So,
What was it your friend did that was, well, you said,
Yeah.
thank God you called him.
well, we went to this meeting, and he'd been a sponsor at the club before. He was a successful businessman, so they knew him, and he understood everything a bit more. So, and I wanted someone away from me to see and tell me, and he saw their behavior in that meeting. That meeting was like, and again, going through it, I was in tears. I'm an emotional person, but I mean, imagine at the time how raw it was then, and these people were just not interested. They just were not, and they said, "Oh, at the least you're gonna have a white ball contract. We don't see it as your problem." Blah blah blah, and it gave me all the
Sorry,
stuff.
what's a white ball contract?
So instead of there's there's the two formats, the 50 over and T20s white ball, and then the longer format's red ball. So
Got you.
and then they said they'll do this, they'll do that, speak to other people. Suddenly I left that meeting. They didn't do most of what they said. Got rid of me 7 days later.
Well, essentially, everyone was conspiring against you at this point.
But that board member rang me, and he was trying to pretend to be my friend. He was like, "Oh, we can do this informal investigation, and then blah blah. But then, if we do it formally," and it was this was the big thing. It was his way of like, because I knew I wasn't perfect, right? It was this way, but everything will come out in the open and stuff like that. So I said, "Look, I don't care about that bit, but I want to do it informally because I want everyone to learn from this
Yeah.
and be better." So I went to Pakistan. They sort of thought, what, leave him. And, like I tried to rebuild my life. They carried on their merry way. They thought, we've got away with it. Perfect.
And you were trying to rebuild your life back in Pakistan at this point, or
Yeah,
just in
I
general?
gave my flat keys to my dad and said, "I'm done."
Okay.
I lost all faith in humanity at this
Yeah.
point. I've people, even my agent, who
the people who were closest to you at that time,
who knew
who
me,
should have been looking after you.
he messaged me when I spoke out publicly. He messaged me, I was saying, I wish you'd have told me. I've got WhatsApp messages to him in January that year saying, "Man, I'm going to commit suicide. Man, I feel like I'm going to be, because I had my second incident of, nearly doing it in 2018. And, before the loss of my son, actually, the loss of my son gave me so much strength.
Yeah.
It's actually it's made me the human being I am today. It
gave you
got
something
me,
to fight for.
yeah, but no, he brought me closer to my religion. He gave me back. The me that I'd lost through that time, I got back fully, properly then.
Yeah. Just so tragic that that had to happen.
Yeah,
for
but
that to
our religion,
happen.
our religion teaches us, if you have a baby lost, your child's gonna, on the day of judgment, is gonna fight with Allah, hold your hand and take you to heaven.
Wow.
And that's
Powerful.
that's so powerful, and that's what got us through. Because we were losing losing our marbles, really.
So throughout this whole process, everyone's trying to discredit you, because I want to go back to the question which I was going to say earlier. You were being attacked from everybody once you spoke out. What was that like, and what happened?
I mean, firstly, so from this stage, this is 2018.
Yeah.
I go away, and then 2019, come back. We have a boy, and I work very healthy. Second pregnancy was difficult, but we have a boy. And
What's
then
his name?
Ayan.
Beautiful name.
So and then I'm starting to put my life together. Starting to mentally get out there. I got myself super fit. I was telling you how
Yep.
fit I'd got. I was going to go back to play cricket. Start of 2020, I was going to go get myself back in there, and then
Why?
Yeah, it was like, why would
but
you want to
not
put yourself back in that place again?
not at Yorkshire, but I wanted, firstly, it was all I knew, right? I haven't said this a lot, but I was pretty freaking good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to, I didn't want my last connection with cricket to be the loss of my son.
Yeah.
Fair.
So that was my biggest thing, is I didn't want that last connection of cricket to be that memory. And also that was my way to put food on the table. So that's what I want. So I got myself really fit. I was going to go trial and get myself, and then COVID happened. The world shut down. Reflection time for everyone. We as a family started taking food for the NHS, local A&E, key workers, just, because a lot of friends just work there, chocolates, fruits. Then we started as a family cooking meals and then selling them and raising money for the hospice and taking more for key workers, nurses, doctors, across the board. So that gave us a lot of purpose. Obviously Black Lives Matter happened, George Floyd. And I think it was a real time of reflection for a lot of people of colour.
How'd you feel when you saw that footage?
Still today. I mean, but you look at it now and the whole hoo-ha around it and everyone doing all the corporate stuff around it, and you look at it and things have really moved on.
Have they?
Have they really? But in terms of how it made you feel, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's still happening day in, day out in certain parts of the world. It's not really changed.
It's not, and that's the thing, as I've still, over the last few years, I've still seen, because now I'm sort of more aware as well. You see more and more of it.
The thing that killed me was how easily people watched it. It was shared. I couldn't look at it.
We're so desensitized to these things now.
I couldn't look at it.
But that was what I was going to come to. The biggest thing with it was the bystanders.
Yeah.
And okay, the person who videoed it and stuff, it went out.
Do something.
Freaking someone do something.
Help.
Someone do something. There's a bloke there dying. Someone do something. And obviously that's the physical element of it. That's how I felt, that I'm dying. Someone help me.
Help me. And
someone
everyone
help
just
me.
stood by.
And everyone just goes, I'll just look after myself. I'll just look after myself. And so that, happened. And then Yorkshire, the director of cricket did a nice little PR interview with the local press, how he'd never been in a dressing room that had racism, blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking,
Which is
hold on a minute.
completely fictitious.
I was like, hold on a minute. I sat in your office 2 years ago telling you all of this. That really irritated me. And then we took the charity on to opening a business, food place, tea place, Asian tea place. And I had an interview around...
So you've set up the business here?
No, in Yorkshire and in 2020, and I had an interview around that, how transitioning from cricket into business. I got asked a question. I got emotional. I said a little bit, but I didn't say a lot. At that point, I thought, they'll ring, we'll get in a room, have a conversation, we'll work out a way to make things better. Yorkshire initially ignored it. Then the board director got in touch. I was like, are you getting in touch with me as a friend, or are you getting in touch with me? Because at this point, I see him as a friend. Or are you getting official capacity? Because what I don't want is you go to the press and say, oh, we've been in regular contact. He gave me all the nicey-nicey. Hour later, a journalist says to me, the chief executive just said, that our inclusivity and diversity board member has been in regular contact with him.
What was it you said in the initial article that triggered this?
The initial article, I said that I had, I'd shared a dressing room with an openly racist captain. I said, I'd look the other way and things that have happened, and I looked the other way, and I wish I'd said something. And I talked about one incident that, that happened with a senior player, and that racism is rife.
So this article was about you transitioning from
It was
cricket to business,
Yeah.
and the journalist asked you what was it like.
I mean, he just asked me a question about what did I ever face prejudice, and he talked to me about another teammate, a South Asian teammate, and my relationship with him, and I just got emotional, and I couldn't.
You're being honest because
I couldn't lie.
you'd experienced
You
all
weren't
of
being
this.
emotional. You were
I-
stating.
yeah.
But at no point then you thought this would blow up into anything, or there was an agenda behind it, or
That at that point, genuinely, if you were to say to me that I would have death threats and my family would be attacked and I'd leave the country, I'd be laughing at you.
yeah,
If you'd have said to me I'd be sat in front of a select committee in Parliament, it being aired live all over the world, I would be like, what?
yeah,
To be honest, getting them to the independent investigation was like literally they were pushed, shoving, and screaming into that. So at no point I thought it would blow up into that. And then,
because it escalated rapidly.
but this at this point, right? So then it escalated a little bit. It had a little like of a burst, but it was cricket press, a little bit of sport
Yeah.
press,
So
but it was.
It wasn't picked up by national press.
Yeah, well, when that journo got in contact with you an hour later, saying, right, so we've just heard this, what was your response?
This was a different journalist.
Okay.
This was when I opened up a
Okay.
bit more. I talked about coming close to committing suicide. I opened up a bit more. And this is the journalist, George DeBell, who was at the Cricket Info at the time. He was the cricketer at the time, who was literally him. And actually, I missed one. So between the article and the journalist, I did a podcast with a guy who used to be a Yorkshire media manager. And we had a relationship, but we hadn't spoken to each other for a long time, and that's where I opened up a little bit more. And Yorkshire's response was, "Oh, well, he's not mentioned Yorkshire," and I was like, "Let me make it very clear. It was I'm
Yeah.
talking about
It's you.
Yorkshire, right?" But he was brilliant because what he did is he then said, "This is not reaching where it should, and I've only got this reach." He went to George DeBell, who's a senior correspondent at Cricket Info, ESPN Cricket Info, a massive international platform. So he went to him, and George went back to him and said, "Look, I'm busy." And he was like, "I'll listen to it in between test matches and get back to you." He listened to it, and then when he got involved and did that piece on Cricket Info, it just went like that.
Question. When, after that podcast, when it's like, there's not enough reach, I'm going to put you in touch with someone that's got greater reach, and it's like light, it's like breathing, all of a sudden you're seen. How was that moment for you, having gone through being ignored and you don't exist and all of that, to having such a different experience?
That phase of having James Butler from the Cricket Badger podcast and the support that he has given me, I mean, we have spoken from there onwards 3-4 times a day. There was a phase in the next phase where I gave him my phone passcodes and everything. That I just became so sort of struggling. But he's been my rock, like he's been a rock. And to have someone who, and also the interesting bit in this conversation is, this is where the solutions become a problem, is I got supported by 2 middle-aged white men. The very demographic that gets absolutely thrashed in this, right, in this subject.
Yeah.
And supported, and I'm talking like they put their neck on the line. They have suffered work-wise, James Butler, and then George has had to have fences put at his house. He's had to have, he's lost work, he's lost friends. He currently feels like he's lost his home in cricket. And this is one of the most senior journalists in the country. He was chair of the Cricket Writers Club, right? And only recently stepped down. And I know that a lot is because he's backed me.
Yeah.
Because he has sat on the side of anti-racist against a racist, and even his own colleagues have ostracized him. People who he has spent the most of his time with. So so I spoke to him, and he did that piece. It all escalated for a bit, and then everyone just went into that. But then through that 18 months before, through that sort of 12, 14 months before it got to the select committee. And this is where, there's been a lot of negative spoken about. I am so fortunate. I am so lucky. I've had the most amazing professional support that anyone could ask for. I've had Jennifer Robinson from Doughty Street Chambers, who represented Julian Assange, represented Amber Heard in the UK, represent me pro bono.
Wow.
And she's become a friend. She's become a rock. Paris Garcia, Doughty Street. I had, Mark Leffley from Power Scott PR represent me for 3 years pro bono. I've had the most. And then when we go further, I've had Mish Kondareya, who are a massive Silver Circle law firm in London, who have represented me for 2 years pro bono. I mean, and I've not had it's pro bono. I've had 24/7 support. I've had the most incredible support from these people. And if it wasn't for these allies, George, James, if it wasn't for these, one, I wouldn't have been heard in the way I have. But secondly, I wouldn't be at a stage where I can now sit here, in a better space mentally and be like, you know what, I'm going to use my platform for
How's your faith in humanity now?
With these people, honestly, it has restored it. And also, since coming here to Dubai, and I know I've jumped a lot here, but it's started to restore me so much. The love, the warmth, and, how people have wanted to help each other. And also, over the last 12 months, amongst all the rubbish that I've had to deal with, I've been given a platform. I spoke at a Google event, and this was surreal. I was walking to breakfast, and I'm watching this guy walk towards me, entourage around him, like, I recognise him, walk past him, get backstage, and it's Gordon Brown, and I'm sharing a stage, with him. So outside of cricket, I've had the most immense support. I've got a book coming out, a documentary. So, and all of these platforms, I've spoken at some big organisations, but it's what we do next. But from a human element, it's been therapeutic. It's been it's got easier. And, today I might have got close a couple of times, when I first, I would be in tears. I couldn't even get my words out. So I'm getting, on a human level, I'm getting to a space where I'm, starting to I don't think you're ever going to get full closure in any way, but I want to now turn the whole thing into the biggest positive in the world and use my platform that I've been given to, one, create opportunities for people in cricket, support people who go through grief and child loss, especially fathers, because, I remember...
There's not enough.
I remember the doctor saying to me, oh, it's her kid, and, that sits with me.
Yeah, it's not.
And then, mental health and the stigma around South Asia mental health, but just mental health as a whole, because I've been in some dark places, but people ask me, why do you keep putting yourself through sharing it? And I just feel like I've gone past that stage of really breaking through a certain point on these subjects, and if I can help one person, I'll just be I remember one guy came up to me, disabled guy on his wheelchair, and said, you've changed my everyday working life. Before, I used to go in, ask for funding, and it'd be like, oh, now it's like, how much? That's something I can go to my grave with, genuinely. And that I wake up every day now with an absolute passion to use what's been handed to me in a responsible manner and impact others. But at the same time, as a 32-year-old, I just want to have a lot of fun along the way doing it. I know I jumped
thing is,
completely the other way.
selfishly, I'm sort of glad that your dad and you didn't communicate that well when you were younger, because had you communicated, you would have left the UK and you wouldn't be making the difference you're making today.
Be a different life journey for sure.
And I wouldn't genuinely. I wouldn't change. People ask me, would you? So going the speaking out, the select committee, my world changing, the way it's been attacked. My business being attacked, social media.
Because you were physically attacked, verbally attacked.
Yeah, feeling,
all
and
sorts.
also, there's this psychological safety.
Yeah.
And I'm driving at times through the last year and a half, and I feel like someone sat next to me. I'm having a conversation with someone. I'm like, they're recording me. I was back in the UK a few weeks ago, and I was, I took my wife shopping, and this bloke starts filming me, recording me, and that makes you so paranoid and so, and it makes you feel so vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I'm watching a bit of the Prince Harry stuff, and whatever you sit on wherever, and I can see it. It resonates, and also
you've experienced it firsthand.
Yeah. When you're living this, right? Honestly, sometimes when I even tell people, I think they must think that I'm living in some la la land. But when I've been living it through this last 3 years, I've been thinking, am I living in a film here? Is this really happening? A place I've called home. People I've shared dressing rooms with, us going on Twitter and abusing the hell out of me and my family. What is going on? And then fake accounts And then you start thinking, where is it coming from? And then leaks, you know, your personal life, and you think, who is doing it? And you start, you know, living in this continuous circle of what is going on, and you're trying to fight these battles. Like, who are you you don't even know. I don't even know who's on my side or who I'm fighting throughout this, apart from the select few who are close to me. You know, I've sat in rooms with leadership right now recently, and I know full well they're talking shit. I am sat there. The thing that hurt or is a big problem for them is, one, I can't be bought. You know, at different stages I've been said, oh, you know, we'll look after you, we'll get you this, we'll get you that. One, my morals and values won't be bought. And second, I'm not stupid. So I'm sat in rooms, and I know full well they're talking absolute crap to me. You know, I know they're talking because I know what's happening behind the scenes. But I'm just thinking to myself, God, you know, the world that you must live in, that you can sit there. And unfortunately, I think we found our society and sports and just struggle to handle abuse and, you know, tough subjects like this that have been happening, because it's like, oh yeah, but we're going to lose brand sponsorship and all that stuff. But, you know, going back to, I absolutely, if I did want, you know, had it again, I would do it all over again, you know, and every time, because ultimately there comes a moment in your life where you realize life is worth than just past your own nose. And I need, you know, you've got to look past your own nose, and it's got to be bigger than just you. And that actually gives me a buzz. You know, it gives me a real buzz. So, you know, when I've been attacked the way I have, it was, you know, tough. Really tough. But the one thing I knew is they couldn't take me close to what it was like carrying my son from hospital to graveyard.
Nothing.
And to make, you know, this is his legacy, and I wanted to make him proud, and do some, you know, my memory of, you know, that not to be left as my director of cricket shouting at me, to be left as actually, you know, Azeem Rafiq, and the power that gave me has been able to create so many good times for other people. And you know, that's something I'm so passionate and energetic towards.
I think that's an incredibly
we got to finish
poignant
right now
and powerful ending.
There's nowhere else to go from here.
Yeah, thank you so much for being so honest and raw and sharing that story. It was
speechless.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
No, thanks for having me, and sorry I made you cry.
No, it was a good thing.
We've had some very emotional episodes. I think this is definitely probably the most emotional.
I think we need to close it off.
Yeah,
it helps. You know, thank you from my point of view, because it genuinely, every time I speak about it, it really helps me. Yeah, it really, on
Makes
a human level, it
heals a little bit.
It's so therapeutic, and it's therapy, you know, with people, and it's just you know, and you know, if anyone can leave the episode listening, that just I'd encourage anyone to reach out, reach out, and you know, if anyone wants to reach out, the one thing I'd say is, through that time, there was a time where I felt like, you know, I was on my own, I was reaching to people and I wasn't getting the help. The one thing, if anyone else, if they find themselves in that situation, they'll have one more person supporting them than I had. And you know, reach out to me. I'm available to anyone that is struggling in any way, whether it's through this or, you know, I've over the last few years learned a hell of a lot in how to cope with some of this. And, you know, if I can help anyone, just reach out.
We'll put your contact details on socials. But Azeem, thank you again so much for joining us today and for sharing that.
And if it's all right, we'd like to get you back at some point to give us some updates.
Absolutely. Hopefully, I can come back and tell you about all the good stuff
100%.
next time.
Because you recently called Dubai home now, so I think we run out of time. But it'd be good to understand the next part of that journey, because it's to be continued.
This is a to be continued episode.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to Rooted Within with Lili and Dan, a podcast that shines a spotlight on positive change makers sharing their stories of legacy, inspiration, and impact.